Chapter 6. Taming the First Journey. Rin landed softly in the back garden, where his parents' mature iron-rank plants maintain an herb and food garden. Though it wasn't theirs anymore, they could still use it to pay part of the house rent and cover some basic food for the family. Beyond the garden's wooden fence, just a few meters away, the terrain began to descend. The view of enormous plains lay almost completely hidden by darkness. There were no walls to climb, no guards to evade. Their house was one of the last structures before the civilized world dissolved into no man's land. Only some plantations dared exceed the common cultivation zone. Those with enough for guards. But with this house so close to the external zone of the abyss, nobody wanted to invest in lands that could be invaded by hordes of cursed monsters if the army ever faltered. Being in the front line was frightening, but Rin didn't understand why they were so cowardly in his 10 years of life, and according to his parents in another 30, the hordes had never overcome the army. These empty plains were perfect for cultivation, in his opinion. Not that it affected him any more. He pulled out his father's worn map, tracing with his fingers the lines and annotations he knew by heart. How many times had he heard the story? His father, desperate to find medicine for mana poisoning, unable to get in the market due to that year's shortage. He had been forced to venture into monster domain like many others. Many didn't return that year, and his father almost suffered the same sad fate. The mandatory mission that had nearly cost him his life. And just when I thought it was my end, his father always said at this part, "I found it, a hidden entrance," as if the earth itself had cracked open to save me. I thought I had fallen into a night excavator's hole, but it was an ancient tunnel, probably from the era before mana's expansion. The map showed the path with obsessive detail, every mark, every turn, every landmark carefully noted. His father never knew why he'd been so meticulous in documenting a route he swore never to take again. But Rin's suspected part of him always knew it would be needed someday. An hour later, Rin finally stood at the forest's edge. He'd been lucky not to encounter any exiled and hungry creatures. It seemed the day's bad luck had finally run out. Rin glanced at his spore. The spore floated beside him while its faint glow contrasted with the dark forest. Here, at the boundary, it was strangely peaceful. Healthy monsters never ventured so close to the mana void zone. Only the hordes did that, and on specific dates, following underground routes that humans had learned to predict and attack, to contain, and keep them from leaving the abyss. Here there weren't those kinds of problems. "In theory," whispered Rin, more to give himself courage than to inform his silent companion, "we should be safe until we reach the deep iron forest. Monsters, even iron-rank ones, hate this zone almost as much as dragons do," Rin repeated to convince himself. He unfolded the map one last time, memorizing the first stage. If his father had found that underground tunnel, if it really existed, it would be his best chance. The monsters wouldn't detect him there, and he could advance much deeper into dangerous territory before having to face the real dangers. He turned to look back toward his faraway house one last time. They were probably still awake, worried about him, planning how to make his life more bearable in the coming years. "I'm sorry," he murmured, "but I can't accept that future, not without trying to change it at least once." And with that, he took his first step toward the forest. The spore floated behind him, its weak gray glow barely visible under the light of the 12 moons. The journey that could change his life had just begun. 3 kilometers had never seemed so long. Rin kept to the exact boundary where the earth was still poor enough in mana to keep most beasts away, but not the moon toads. The glowing trees betrayed the change in mana density. His father had specifically warned him about these creatures. No larger than a rabbit, these blue-skinned, translucent amphibians were almost invisible under moonlight, except for their eyes. 3 bioluminescent eyes that glowed with a hypnotic radiance, capable of paralyzing their prey with just a direct look. They weren't particularly strong, barely immature iron-rank beasts, but their hunting method was terrifying. They moved in small groups, surrounding their paralyzed prey, before beginning to secrete an acid that, Rin shook his head. He didn't want to remember that part of his father's stories. Or, worse still, the night excavators. Slow but enormous beasts, the size of a cow, that dug complex burrows under the mana-poor earth. Mature iron-rank beasts. Their long arms ending in massive claws could split a man in half, and though they were lazy and generally solitary, their territories were full of natural traps, hidden holes that led directly to their jaws. Both creatures depended on traps to complement the poor mana in their environment. The spore floated calmly beside him while Rin tested each step carefully. The ground here was treacherous. A network of excavator tunnels could collapse under his weight at any moment. The huge dead tree had to be close. His father had drawn it in detail on the map, an ancient oak, twisted like a claw emerging from the earth, marking the entrance to the secret tunnel. If he could reach it, a bluish flash caught his attention from the corner of his eye. Had that been? No, he mustn't look directly. If they were moon toads, a direct look would be his end. Another blue flash, closer this time. Rin kept his eyes fixed on the ground, his heart hammering against his chest. Moon toads always hunted in groups of 3 to 5. If he'd seen one, a soft melodious croak came from his left, then another from the right. They were surrounding him. "Don't look at their eyes! Don't look at their eyes!" he murmured to himself, repeating the words his father had etched into his memory. Moon toads were slow, clumsy even. If he could keep his composure and keep moving. The ground creaked beneath his foot. Rin froze. That hadn't been the sound of an amphibian. That had been the unmistakable groan of earth giving way over a night excavator's tunnel. He was trapped between two deadly threats. If he retreated, the toads would catch him. If he advanced, he would fall into an excavator's den. And he couldn't stay still. The toads were already... A blue flash appeared right in front of him. So close he could see the details of its translucent skin, the pulse of internal organs glowing with bioluminescence. Rin closed his eyes instinctively, but it was too late. For a fraction of a second, he had seen the toad's 3 hypnotic eyes. His muscles began to go numb. The melodious croaking intensified, now coming from all directions. He could hear the soft padding of their feet approaching, the wet sound of their skin secreting acid. Chapter 7, Taming Danger. The paralysis was spreading through his limbs when the spore, without warning, fused with his body. Rin wanted to scream in frustration. Now's not the time to be stubborn. A miserable strength increase won't help me here. The weak glow of the mushrooms in his hair would only serve to attract more predators, making him a more visible target in the night. The moon toads were getting closer. He could hear the rhythmic padding of their feet, the wet sound of their skin secreting acid. The acrid smell already reached his nose, like rotting fruit and hot metal. But something was strange. The toad in front of him, the one that had paralyzed him, tilted its head. Its 3 eyes blinked in an erratic sequence, breaking the hypnotic pattern. The melodious croaking turned to discordant, confused notes. The mushrooms in Ren's hair pulsed with bioluminescence similar to toads, creating patterns that mimicked the glow of their internal organs. It was as if his head had become a distorted version of his predators. The leader toad jumped forward, its 3 eyes now fixed on the glowing mushrooms. The confusion broke its concentration, and with it, the paralyzing spell. Ren felt control of his body return, just as the ground beneath the toad began to give way. Everything happened in an instant. The toad, disoriented by the luminescent mushrooms, didn't notice it had landed on the edge of an excavator tunnel. The earth crumbled beneath its weight, with an ominous crunch. Its bright eyes widened in surprise as it fell, its melodious croak transforming into a shriek of panic. A deep roar rose from the tunnel's darkness, followed by the unmistakable sound of jaws snapping shut. The other moon toads froze, their bioluminescent patterns becoming erratic with fear. The acid smell intensified, an involuntary defensive reaction. Rin didn't stop to think. His legs, newly freed from paralysis, moved by instinct. A jump to the right, away from the formerly invisible tunnel edge he could now see thanks to the freshly collapsed earth. "The tunnels!" he gasped as he ran. "They form a pattern." Night excavators were methodical, territorial. Their tunnels always followed the same design, a main entrance with traps in a semicircle around it. If the toad had fallen into one, another crunch to his left confirmed his theory. 2 of the remaining toads, in their rush to chase him, had jumped directly onto another weak section. The earth opened beneath them like a hungry mouth. More roars from the depths, more abruptly interrupted shrieks. The last moon toad, perhaps wiser than its companions, disappeared into the night with a terrified croak. Ren stopped, panting, his heart threatening to burst. The mushrooms in his hair still pulsed weakly, but now they seemed more like a reminder of his luck than a curse. "You," he whispered to his spoor, still fused with it, "are still the weakest beast that exists. But thanks, I guess." A distant crunch reminded him this was no time to celebrate. Somewhere beneath his feet, a night excavator had just enjoyed an unexpected dinner of moon toads. And he didn't want to be dessert. The dead tree. He had to find the dead tree before. A deep roar made the earth tremble beneath his feet. It was just an excavator. He reassured himself they wouldn't come out, but the noise attracted something else. A new sound froze Ren's blood, a metallic hiss, like blades dragging against stone. The underground roars quieted, as if trying to go unnoticed. The new sound came from the deep forest toward the bronze ring, where darkness was densest. Ren hid behind a tree. A mirror mantis emerged between the trees, its body covered in reflective plates that fragmented the moonlight. It was huge, horse-sized, but something was wrong with it. Its plates, which should form a perfect pattern, were cracked and misaligned. Deep scars furrowed its exoskeleton, and one of its main sides was broken near the tip. Ren's heart stopped. There shouldn't be a creature like this within 20 kilometers. Mirror mantises were creatures of the deep forest, bronze-rank beasts that would normally never approach a zone so poor in mana. Their bodies were designed to absorb and reflect the dense magical energy of their territory, using their reflective plates to disorient prey with light and mana illusions. This one had been expelled from its territory, probably after losing a territorial battle. The wounds had weakened it so much it couldn't even maintain its natural habitat. And a wounded beast, hungry, forced to hunt in poor lands, was 1,000 times more dangerous than any local predator. The mantis turned its triangular head toward him. Its eye facets, normally a kaleidoscope of iridescent colors, were dull with hunger. The plates on its body tried to reflect the moonlight, but the pattern was erratic, sickly. Instead of the usual hypnotic illusions, it produced only desperate flashes. "Don't look at me! Don't look at me!" Ren silently pleaded, remembering the basic lessons about beasts that every child learned. Mirror mantises usually hunted by creating illusory duplicates of their prey, confusing them until they stumbled over their own reflections. But this one in its famished state. A stray flash created a small reflection beside the tree and illuminated Run. The creature moved. Despite its wounds, its speed was terrifying. The scythes, even the broken one, cut the air with a deadly whistle. No games, no illusions, just pure, desperate hunger. Ren ran. The dead tree had to be close. His father had mentioned that the twisted roots pointed north, that the bark marked by ancient lightning formed an arrow-like pattern. Behind him, the metallic hiss drew closer. The mantis couldn't maintain that speed for long in a zone so poor in mana, but it didn't need to. It only needed to catch him once. A sigh plunged into the ground beside him. So close he felt the displaced air cut his cheek. The mantis's broken plates tinkled like broken bells, its breathing a tortured hiss of hunger and desperation. And then Ren saw it, the dead tree, its twisted silhouette cut against the night sky. But the mirror mantis was getting closer, and the sound of its broken plates was like a promise of death. Chapter 8, Taming the Tunnels. Ren saw it, the dead tree, its twisted silhouette cut against the night sky. The mirror mantis was getting closer, and the sound of its broken plates was like a promise of death. The dead tree was less than 50 meters away when the ground gave way beneath Ren's feet. Hope had got him distracted. For one terrible moment, Ren floated in darkness, his stomach lurching as gravity claimed its prey. His father's kitchen knife flew from his belt. In an act of pure instinct, Ren grabbed it. The blade plunged into the tunnel wall, slowing his fall with strength he didn't know he had. Earth and stones rained around him, striking his face, getting in his eyes. Above, the mirror mantis stopped at the hole's edge. Its broken plates created a sickly kaleidoscope of fragmented moons. The creature tilted its triangular head, calculating, hungry. No, no, no. Ren kicked at the wall, searching for foothold. The knife was slipping. The earth gave way and Ren fell. The mantis jumped. Its size gleamed in the darkness as it fell, the metal of its broken exoskeleton singing a death song. Rin saw his life flash before his eyes, 10 short years that would end in darkness, far from his parents, without even a chance to. A deafening roar shook the tunnel. The image of the excavator catching him made him drive the knife back in, and in his desperation he saw a small tunnel beside him. The parallel tunnel was narrow, barely wide enough for Ren to crawl through. Without thinking, Ren pushed himself toward the tunnel, but the mantis caught up. However, just before it could grab Ren, as he entered the tunnel, the wall beneath the mantis opened, revealing the monstrous head of a night excavator. The beast had been hibernating, storing what little mana was available when the collapse had awakened it, and now it was hungry. The mirror mantis twisted in the air, its sides finding excavator flesh instead of its original prey. The excavator roared in pain, its massive claws emerging from the earth to catch its attacker. Ren was paralyzed with terror. Less than 2 meters away, 2 nightmare beasts fought in a deadly dance of metal and earth. The mantis's broken plates created chaotic flashes in the darkness, while the excavator tried to drag its prey into the depths. To his right, almost invisible in the darkness, Ren distinguished an opening, an older tunnel, its walls smoothed by the passage of time. He had no choice. The winner would be decided soon. He crawled into the tunnel, while behind him the battle reached its climax. The mantis's metallic shriek mixed with the excavator's roar. There was a horrible crunch, and then silence. Ren crawled away from the edge, his breathing so loud in his ears he feared the winning beast might hear him. "I'm alive," he thought, incredulous. The mushrooms in his hair provided the only light in the tunnel's absolute darkness, their weak glow barely sufficient to see his own trembling hands. "Please let the excavator have one. Please let the excavator have one," Ren muttered while crawling as fast as he could. Night excavators were territorial and slow. If it won the battle, it would take its time devouring its prey before considering pursuing him. But if the mantis won, a victorious shriek made his blood freeze. It wasn't the deep roar he'd hoped to hear. No, no, no! The mushrooms in his hair barely illuminated the path when a fork appeared before him. The left tunnel was irregular, clearly the work of some beast, but the right one. Ren stopped, panting. The walls were too smooth, too perfect, exactly as his father had described in his stories. As if someone had melted the stone itself. Son, a tunnel of the ancients, from when humans lived here and shaped rock with magic. Behind him, the wet sound of flesh being torn made him nauseous. The mantis was feeding, but one meal was all it needed to recover strength and continue hunting. Ren entered the ancient tunnel, now in a much more spacious place. The mushrooms in his hair revealed marks on the walls, symbols he couldn't understand, but that were definitely not natural. This had to be the path his father had found. The tunnel seemed to stretch eternally into darkness. Ren had maintained a quick pace for what felt like hours, driven by fear and adrenaline, but now his legs trembled from the effort and his breathing was heavy. He stopped, leaning against the smooth wall of the ancient tunnel. Remembering what his father said about berries helping recover energy and maintaining a clear mind, he ate some of the ones he brought. He thought about lighting a torch with the flint, but he'd forgotten to collect wood, and his mushrooms provided enough light. With a clearer mind, he began to analyze the situation. According to his father's map, he should have found the exit by now. Had he taken a wrong turn? Chosen the wrong tunnel? The mushrooms in his hair provided light in the absolute darkness, but their glow was barely enough to see a few meters ahead. Though they were better than a torch, they had saved him too. Ren had been cursing them since he'd invoked them, but now, "At least you're good for something," he murmured to the spore, still fused with him, even if just as a lamp. He let himself drop to the ground, his legs grateful for the rest. The water from his canteen was lukewarm, but had never tasted better. While catching his breath, he studied the mysterious symbols on the walls. Some seemed to respond weakly to his mushroom's light, as if they recognized something in their faint glow. "I suppose I should thank you for the thing with the toads, too," he continued, surprising himself by talking to the world's weakest creature. Though it was pure luck. You probably didn't even know what you were. A distant echo interrupted his words. The unmistakable sound of metal against stone, followed by that blood-freezing, hungry hiss. The mantis had finished feeding, and this time there would be no more excavators to distract it. This time he would be alone, and now it was coming for him. No, no, no. Rin jumped up when metallic hiss resonated in the distance, but closer. The mushrooms in his hair now pulsed with a strange yellowish glow, but he barely had time to wonder why. The tunnel stretched before him like a black throat. There were no side exits, no places to hide. Chapter 9, Taming the Mantis. Just smooth, ancient stone and those mysterious symbols that seemed to glow faintly under his mushroom's yellow light. Come on, Rin urged himself. The metallic hiss drew closer. He could hear the sides scraping against the tunnel walls, the sickly tinkling of broken plates. Another hiss, closer. The mantis moved faster now, the excavator's flesh providing it with new energy. The jingling of its damaged exoskeleton was like a death bell approaching in the darkness. Ren ran. His feet struck the ancient floor as he plunged deeper into the tunnel. The air grew colder, denser. His breathing echoed in his ears, mixing with the ever-closer sound of sighs against stone. Scryach, scryach, scryach. The mantis didn't even need to run. Its steady, relentless pace was enough. Sooner or later, the tunnel would end. Sooner or later, he'd run out of places to flee. A flash of its sides illuminated the tunnel behind him. The beast was close enough now that the mushroom's light revealed the sickly gleam of its eye facets, the irregular pattern of its broken plates. It didn't matter that it was injured. It didn't matter that it had been expelled from its territory. It was still a bronze-rank creature, and he was just a child with the world's weakest beast. The tunnel began to narrow, or maybe his eyes were playing tricks in the darkness. The yellow light from the mushrooms cast strange shadows on the walls, making the ancient symbols seem to dance. Scryach, scryach, scryach. Closer, ever closer. Rin stumbled, his knee striking stone. Pain exploded in his leg, but terror kept him moving. He rose and kept running, limping, crawling forward. The mantis hissed, the sound now so close he could feel the vibration in his bones. Its broken plates created a nightmare spectacle on the tunnel walls, reflecting the mushroom's yellow light in fractal, demented patterns. And then the tunnel ended. A smooth, solid wall rose before him, covered in ancient symbols that seemed to mock his fate. No way out. The metallic hiss stopped. In the silence that followed, Rin could hear the sides scraping against stone as the mantis approached slowly, savoring the moment. It no longer needed to run, no longer needed to hurry. Its prey was cornered. It only had to. The mushroom's yellow light intensified, as if responding to Ren's terror. The symbols on the wall began to glow with the same sickly hue, peeling off the walls in small clouds, creating patterns that reminded him of spores. The mirror mantis stopped. Its eye facets reflected the yellow light, creating a kaleidoscope of death on the tunnel walls. It raised its size, preparing for the final blow. But something was wrong. The beast tilted its triangular head, confused. Its broken plates tinkled with a new rhythm, more erratic, more frightened. The air grew dense, heavy with a smell Rin had never experienced before. It was like damp earth and rusted metal, like rotting leaves and something older, deeper. The symbols on the wall, which he'd thought were marks of the ancients, began to move. No, not move. They were detaching. They're not symbols, whispered Rin, the horror of realization hitting him like an icy fist. They're spores, dormant spores. The mantis took a step back, its metallic hiss transforming into something close to panic. Its plates now reflected thousands of points of yellow light detaching from the walls, ceiling, floor, spores that had been waiting for centuries, awakening to the resonance of the mushrooms in Ren's hair. The entire tunnel was alive, and it was hungry. The ancient spores swirled in the air like a golden storm, enveloping the mantis first. The beast shrieked, a sound Ren never imagined such a fearsome creature could make. Its broken plates, reflecting light imperfectly, created a horror show as the spores found every crack, every fissure in its exoskeleton. Rin pressed himself against the back inclined wall, his heart beating so hard he thought it would burst. The mantis writhed, its sides cutting the air uselessly while the golden cloud consumed it. Its metallic shriek faded, transforming into a wet, terrible sound. And then silence. Where the powerful bronze beast had stood, now lay only a mound of broken plates covered in yellowish mold that pulsed with ancient life. The spores turned toward Ren. The golden cloud swirled like a wave of ancient hunger. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed frantically, but this time there was no confusion. There was no salvation. The ancestral spores weren't normal predators. They were vestiges of forgotten age, and everything living was their prey. The first contact was like frozen fire on his skin. Yellowish fungi sprouted from his arms, legs, neck, each pulsing with a sickly rhythm that drained his energy. The pain was indescribable, as if every pore in his body was being devoured from within. "No, please," he gasped, falling to his knees. But then he saw it, where the spores had detached from the ceiling. A ray of light filtered through like a promise of salvation. An exit, barely large enough for a child to pass through. Rin stood up, his legs trembling with effort. The invasive fungi kept spreading across his body, but something was different. Where the mantis had succumbed in seconds, he remained conscious. His own spore, the world's weakest beast, pulsed with its light, as if it were fighting. Every effort was agony. He pushed himself upward, his fingers finding the hole's edge just as his knees threatened to give way. The light blinded him momentarily as he crawled out of the tunnel. It wasn't the outside. Chapter 10, Taming Fate. He emerged into a small natural cave, its walls covered in bioluminescent crystals that bathed everything in an ethereal, spectral blue light. But he could barely appreciate the chamber's beauty. The ancestral fungi continued spreading, consuming his vital energy. "Please," he whispered, his vision blurring. "I don't want to die here." His spore fought valiantly, its own mushrooms creating barriers against the yellow infection, but it was losing the battle. Rin could feel his consciousness fading, his body growing colder by the second. That's when he saw it. In the cave center, bathed in crystal light, grew a plant that seemed like it reminded him of the one on his father's stories. "The plant," he mumbled, crawling toward it as the yellow fungi continued their spread. "The one that helped Mother." His fingers brushed the luminous stem just as darkness began claiming the edges of his vision. With trembling hands, Rin pulled the glowing plant free. The yellow fungi still expanded across his body, but something in his mind, something deeper than conscious thought, told him this was important. This plant was, though he didn't fully understand. His father had found one like it almost 12 years ago in another tunnel. The miracle medicine that had allowed his mother to conceive. But this one was different. Where his father's plant had been firm and robust, this one was delicate and ethereal. This was a female. His father had found the male. With the ancestral fungi consuming his last strength, Rin brought the plant to his lips. The taste was like liquid light, like remembering a dream, and then he felt it, a deep resonance with something already existing in his body, dormant genes inherited from his mother, the echo of the other half of the medicine that had made his existence possible. The two halves of an ancient medicine, separated by years and tunnels, finally reunited in his blood. The effect was instantaneous. Pure white light emanated from his skin, so intense that the yellow fungi recoiled, withering and falling like ash. His spore, that supposedly useless creature, began pulsing with a new rhythm, perfectly synchronized with the energy now flowing through his veins. To any observer, the spore would have appeared exactly the same, small, apparently weak. But Rin could feel that something had fundamentally changed within, as if it had evolved into a completely new variant, one that no one had ever seen before. What Rin didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that he had just completed an ancient recipe, a medicine that required 3 specific ingredients: the male plant, the female plant, and something unique a host bore with the first half of the formula. He himself was the missing key. The mushrooms in his hair returned to their usual color, giving the impression that nothing had changed. But in the depths of his being, a dormant power had just awakened, a power that would change everything. Hunger awakened him first, a ravenous void that made his hands tremble as he pulled the bread with stew from his backpack. He ate desperately, savoring each bite as if it were the first food he'd ever tasted. The mushrooms in his hair shone with a stronger light than before, illuminating the cave crystals with dancing shadows. Rin noticed, but he'd survived too many horrors at night to worry about such a small change. As he chewed the last piece of bread, The reality of what he'd done began to hit him. He'd been seconds from death multiple times. If the moon toads had caught him, if the excavator had found him, if the mantis, if the spores, his parents, what would have become of them if he... I should go back, he murmured, guilt weighing heavier than exhaustion. This was madness. Return. The voice was so soft at first, he thought it was his own mind. But there was something different about it, something ancient and wise that resonated deep within his being. And then it began. As if someone had opened a floodgate in his mind, knowledge began to flow. He saw his spore, not as a weak creature everyone despised, but as something with infinite potential. He understood, with crystal clarity, every step necessary for its cultivation, the exact way to feed it different types of fungi, the precise cultivation to strengthen the bond, the correct sequence of evolutions, the bifurcations in its path to power. But it didn't stop there. The mirror mantis. He saw how its plates formed, how it channeled light and mana, the weak points in its exoskeleton where cracks always began, its life cycle, the night excavators, the way they built their tunnels, the patterns they followed, how they conserved energy during times of scarcity, the moon toads, the mechanism behind their hypnotic eyes, the exact composition of their acid, the mating rituals that determined their hunting patterns. The ecology and biology of the creatures he'd encountered became clear to him now. It was as if he could see the invisible threads connecting all creatures, understand their most intimate natures, their strengths, their weaknesses, their secrets. What is this?" he whispered, overwhelmed by the avalanche of information. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed softly, and for the first time since obtaining his spore, Rin felt he could see the path before him, not just his own, all creatures' paths.